Good morning, everyone. I'm Tracy Wyman. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at the Science Based Targets Initiative. We are a global climate action organization helping companies do their part to address climate change. I want to start this little talk with a short story. So I spent a lot of my career working in international development, and about 15 years ago I was working in southern Africa in Mozambique, which is just north of South Africa on the east coast of Africa, and I was working in nutrition, agriculture, private sector development. I went on a field trip to one of our projects in the far north of the country, and as we were flying in, I looked down out of the windows of the small plane, and as far as I could see, the land was this deep cracks, right? Dry, incredibly dry, deep cracks. And I don't know if any of you have been to southern Africa, but it's this beautiful, wild countryside where most people live on subsistence agriculture. So they have their little plots and they farm them to feed themselves and their families. And so I turned to my colleague and said, why do people live here? This seems uninhabitable. And he said, oh, but no, it hasn't always been like this. This used to be wonderful, fertile land. And it's like this after year upon year of drought. And at that point, 15 years ago, right, I wasn't working in climate change. I was working in sort of peripheral climate change. And that experience, on top of seeing, floods in places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Tanzania, also Mozambique, and my family lived through fires in Northern California. We saw hurricanes in New York City. But that, looking down and seeing the earth, right, really just uninhabitable because of what we have done to our planet, sort of switched something in my mind. And I decided from here on out, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my career to fighting climate change. And so here I am now at the Science Based Targets Initiative. I managed to get to some place where I think is pretty influential. And I'm here to talk to you today about turning ambition into action. And really from the benefit of that turning point 15 years ago in my mind, and also in the 15 years since, seeing a lot of companies actually doing the work and the fantastic work that they're doing to turn the dial. So that's what we're here to talk about. Most of you, or many of you probably already know science-based targets, but just as a little introduction, we distill complex climate science into easy to understand and actionable standards, guidelines, tools that companies can use to allow them to develop greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets that align with the latest climate science. We also have a commercial subsidiary, SBTi Services, which rigorously validates those targets. And that provides independent assurance, which proves to third parties that companies' targets are robust, that they're credible, and that they're aligned with the climate science. So that's really important because it gives investors and customers the confidence that companies are serious about their emissions reduction. And it also builds trust, right? And trust is very important for driving momentum. Since our launch in 2015, SBTi has worked with over 10,000 companies that have joined our initiative. 8,000 of those, more than 8,000 of those, have validated their targets. This adoption spans every sector, every region, and it goes from small companies, SMEs, to multinationals. This momentum hasn't slowed. So you will hear in the news, companies are rolling back, companies are reducing their ambition. No, in the last 18 months alone, more than 4,000 companies have come forward and set and validated their targets with us. Across sectors, across regions, the signal is clear that the business sector is leading the charge on addressing climate change because customers want it. Investors are demanding it. We hear from lots of companies, our investors require us to have science-based targets, and the regulatory environment is evolving, so companies need to get ahead of those compliance requirements. The first decade of science-based targets was about ambition, yes, and it was also about mainstreaming corporate climate action, because before that, it was really governments getting together and talking about how we collectively address climate change. 10 years ago, our founding partners came together and said, we need to help companies know what they should do, how far and how fast to reduce their emissions, and how to do that. So mainstreaming corporate climate action. But now we've entered a new chapter right? In 2025, looking to 2030, which is really around the corner, it's now all about delivery. Because ambition was a really good start, it got us going, but only action is going to truly get us to net zero. I'm not going to be the first or the last person this week to talk about the stakes. Everyone knows about the stakes, but I just want to give you a couple of statistics. Climate change could reduce global economic output by 11 to 14% by 2050. That's up to 18 trillion pounds. It's the entire size of the US economy. Extreme weather will disrupt and is already disrupting supply chains, labor, agriculture, logistics, food supplies, with projected losses up to $25 trillion by 2060. I mean, these are incomprehensible numbers, right? And last year, the UN Secretary General called 2024 a masterclass in climate destruction, right? We saw a few years ago the floods in Germany. We saw last year the floods in Spain. Some of us here in the UK are aware that we are living through a drought. So this is not a future threat, right? It's happening now. It's a present-day crisis for people in places like Mozambique, in places like Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, but also right here in the UK and in the rest of Europe. But taking action is not just about risk mitigation. It's also very much about value creation. So any of you here who are working for companies, you are of course thinking about how you deliver value for your company. Science-based targets helps cut the Earth's pollution blanket. They support the shift away from fossil fuels, which the science says we need to do urgently. They protect human health, biodiversity, and long-term economic stability, which of course matters to all of us in the UK, in the rest of Europe, and all over the world. They help companies understand their transition risks and give them a roadmap, and this is really important, a roadmap for how to decarbonize to emerge stronger, more resilient, and yes, absolutely, more competitive. We have heard from consultants that we've been working with and the research that they've done that companies that set science-based targets decarbonize faster than other companies. And it's not just about intent, right? Science-based targets provide a path for real, meaningful, and I really want to stress this, achievable emissions reductions. Because sometimes we hear and the news narrative say, oh, it's too hard, right? We need to roll back because it's too hard. No. Companies that we are working with are telling us we are working, we're doing the work, and the whole point of our tools that we provide is to make them achievable. Increasingly, science-based targets are how companies win business. They're telling us that they need science-based targets to get the work that they're bidding for, secure capital from investors, and inspire internal momentum. So we often ask companies, why are you setting targets? We've got, it's part of our system to ask them what their rationale was to help us understand the market. Targets help them, they tell us, get internal buy-in and secure resources. So any of you here who are working for internal sustainability teams, if you don't already have science-based targets, it's a great way to rally the troops and get the resources you need to do your work. They open up opportunities in procurement and new partnerships, and they create alignment and pride across organizations. We very often hear from teams that have set targets how proud they are to have achieved that important milestone. So what does good look like, right? It's not just about setting targets, and this is why science-based targets was set up in the first place, because companies were setting targets that really didn't mean anything. There was no way to understand them and no way to compare them, and no way to know if they were legitimate or not. So it's about setting science-based targets, about building a credible transition plan that's backed by resourcing and investment, and then delivering that through action, through collaboration with your supply chain, with your stakeholders, and through investment to make that action happen. We're hearing more and more, I said, a minute ago, we're entering a decade of delivery, not just ambition. And we're hearing more and more companies asking us and other, investors and other stakeholders asking us, are companies achieving their targets? What sort of progress, if you've set a target, what sort of progress are you making? Because of course a goal doesn't say that you've achieved it. So that means that when you set a target, it's really important to make it ambitious and to do the absolute most that you can even if you end up falling short. And we're now in the evolution of our organization where the early adopters, the first big companies to set targets, are coming up to their 5-year, first review. And they're asking us, what if we don't achieve our targets? What if we fall short? We've been doing the work, but we're having some challenges. And our answer to them is doing the work is the most important thing, right? Even if you fall short, an ambitious target is what we need, because no one ever changed the world with easy goals. It simply has never happened, and it's not going to happen now. And there's nothing easy about the speed and scale of decarbonization we are called on now collectively, all of us in this room and far beyond, to deliver. But I do have some good news. It's not all bad. We are already seeing what's possible. Across the UK and right across Europe and even far beyond, we have a lot of companies in Japan, for example, who have set science-based targets. Companies in manufacturing, construction, retail, consulting, and other sectors are setting science-based targets. They're collaborating with their peers and supply chains, and I want to call out in particular the UK food system that's worked with one of our founding partners, WWF, and a great British NGO called WRAP, to identify shared suppliers and decarbonize through pre-competitive collaboration their shared supply chains. It's absolutely possible, and it's happening. And they are starting to deliver real-world results. So this is not just a theory, right? It's happening now, and it's happening in the real economy. But SBTi doesn't work in isolation. I mentioned our founding partners. We work as part of a broader ecosystem with CDP, with UNGC, WRI, WWF, who all were our founding partners, with many other organizations in civil society, with governments, financial institutions, and increasingly with other standard setters like ISO, GRI, BSI, and disclosure frameworks like ISSB. Because what we're hearing from companies is they need us to simplify their journey and really align across this standards ecosystem. So we are working together to set common standards, to increase accountability, and build the conditions companies need to succeed in a decarbonizing world. To support this work, I'm very excited to tell you about a project that has been several years in the works. That is SBTi's Training and Certification Initiative. So in the next few weeks, we're going to be launching training, which is interactive and free. That is aimed specifically at consultants and internal sustainability teams so that they can help their own organizations and their clients set and deliver their science-based targets. You can find out more and register your interest, and we'll send you an email when we launch. In closing, we are in a decisive decade. 2030 is around the corner. More than half of the world's largest companies have already joined the Science Based Targets Initiative and signed on to our mission. Leading businesses around the world, in the UK, in Europe, in Japan, in China, in Indonesia, in Brazil, in the US, are acting. They are not waiting. So if you hear anyone say, oh, it's not happening, it is simply not true. Half of the world's biggest companies have set science-based targets. It's happening. And there's no better time to get started. And if you and your organization already have science-based targets, to go further faster. Because we have the tools we need. We have the systems we need. We have the science. We understand what's required. What we need now is courage. We need commitment. We need action. On-the-ground action. And every single one of you in this room, no matter what your role is, you are in a position to play a leadership role and make this transition happen. Thank you.